All right, so that seemed to be a good time for part two to end there. It allowed me to kind of compose myself a little bit, so I can do the conclusion of my story growing up in the Jehovah's Witnesses. A couple of things I left out that I wanted to go back and include. Of course, after I told my parents I wanted to be disassociated, um, they didn't really make it all that easy for me. Um, of course, we had an elder come over, and I don't know if his goal, I guess, was probably to try to talk me out of it, but he sat at the dining room table with me and my parents and basically told me I'd end up probably, some drug addicted whore on the street, and my life would basically be nothing without the safety and security of the witnesses. And he tried to warn me of all the bad influences I would run into out in the world. Um, what he didn't seem to understand, though, and I clarified this for him. I might have been 16, but I wasn't a dumb girl. I clarified very much for him that I had plans, I had goals. I wanted to go to college. How many people go to college at the age of 16 and finish at 20? How many people at the age of 16 even have that motivation and drive? Um, and I have to admit, part of my motivation and drive came from him sitting at my table telling me that I was going to end up a drug addicted whore on the street. That to me was a challenge. If you're going to challenge me, I'm going to take you up on the challenge, and it's not going to work out in your favor. Let's just put it that way. When I'm challenged, I work that much harder. I had to put myself through most of school, um, and then it got even worse in my junior year. My parents lived in New York. I went to a New York school, and then they decided to move out of state. And because of my young age and the fact that I wasn't emancipated, yep, my in-state tuition now became out-of-state tuition and more than doubled. So that was a nice little thank you gift my parents gave me. It was kind of one last kick in the ass that they could have given me. Um, so yeah, challenge me, and it's on. That's all I really have to say about that. Um, Also, again, another example of how my parents couldn't just let this go. Um, they had asked me if I was interested in pursuing any other faiths, any other religions, and I almost laughed at that. I don't know how I could have been expected after being force fed for 16 years. Um, Religion, why I would have any other interest in any other religion at that point. Even to this day, I'm almost 33 years old. I have zero interest in religion, at least organized religion. I think it's all a fallacy. But anyway, so my parents, when I answered them and told them no, I had no desire to pursue other religions. They said I needed some sort of spirituality in my life. So they basically insisted that as long as I lived under their roof, which I did from November when I told them I wanted to be disassociated until I left for college the following August. So we're talking a decent chunk of time. They made me continue going to the Sunday meetings. It's about a 2 hour meeting. Add in socializing before and after. It was basically a 3 hour ordeal each Sunday. Um, and what was most difficult, I mean, it's the biggest problem I have with this faith is just the pure hypocrisy. Um, there I was, made to come to Sunday meetings, and I was there amongst people I grew up with, amongst people who babysat me when I was a kid, amongst the few people my age in our congregation. No one looked at me. No one talked to me. No one even acknowledged my existence. Um, and it just seems like my parents didn't have to do that to me, and I'm not quite sure exactly what they were trying to prove at that point. But hey, those were their rules at the time, and there wasn't really a whole lot I could do about it. Once February, March came around, that's when I started making plans to graduate that year. So I was rather busy at that point anyway, and I think, there were times I was able to pull the I'm too busy to go to the Sunday meeting card, but for the most part, they made me go. And that was just horrendously hard. Um, Another thing that really bothers me about this religion is it doesn't even just affect those in the faith. Um, my father, being a non-believer, was basically rebuked by his son-in-law elder for encouraging his daughters to talk. My dad was just trying to be a good dad, and I know that made him feel awful. And I know it made him incredibly sad that his daughters were no longer going to have a relationship. Um, I know that bothered him then, and I know it bothers him to this day. I'm much closer with my dad. I don't know if it's just because he's also a non-believer. I'm much closer with my father than my mother. I probably talk to my father 10 times for every one time I talk to my mother. And when I do talk to my mother, she always ends the conversation with "I love you." And I'd like to believe that. I think she's saying "I love you" to the daughter she wishes she had and used to have. Um, I know she doesn't love how I live. I know she doesn't love that I'm no longer a witness. In fact, she didn't give up with the trying to get me to come back for a while, and she probably never will, although she hasn't had any blatant attempts lately. But my freshman year of college, she started sending me the Awake subscription, and after so many came and remained unopened, I asked her to please stop, because all she was doing was wasting the publications in the paper. They weren't being opened and they weren't being read. When I said I was done, I meant it. I was done. I didn't want to read anything. I left all my books, my Bible, everything in a paper bag in my closet. And I know that bothered my mom because she was like, "Wait, you're not going to take the Bible?" Like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take the Bible. I'm not going to take anything. Um, what also bothers me, how I was saying, is just how this affects non-believers as well. I have a grandmother, an aunt, and cousins who are all non-believers, and this has affected them as well. My cousin is very close in age with my sister. They were close growing up. They don't have a relationship anymore simply because my cousin doesn't agree with how things have gone down. And as it's been put to me, we don't have any use for your sister anymore, is basically how it's been put to me. Which makes me feel good that I have that support, but it also makes me feel bad that this hasn't just affected me and my immediate family. It goes beyond that, and I know it tears my grandmother up that her two granddaughters don't have a relationship. Um, I have seen my sister on a few occasions, 4 occasions to be exact, since '94. Once when she ambushed me when I was visiting my parents. Twice at family funerals, one in 2001 and one in 2003. And what was very difficult about those occasions is in 2001, my sister had a 6-month-old daughter with her. And of course, we were at a family funeral, so there were more non-believers than believers there. And my sister put on a good show. This is the first time I had seen her daughter, my first niece, technically. And she goes to hand the baby to me and says, "Say hi to Aunt Jamie." And it just broke my heart. This kid is never going to know me as her aunt. This kid is never going to call me Aunt Jamie for the rest of her life. Why are you going to put on a show in front of the family? Sad, but you know what? They all saw right through it. At least I did. I'm pretty sure they did too. Then in 2003, that 6-month-old baby was now 2.5, and my sister was pregnant with her second child, who I've never seen. So hard enough when you're adults dealing with other adults, but now I have 2 biological nieces that I'll never know. And of course, my sister is my only sibling, so I kind of miss out on being an aunt. And I'm not somebody who really desires to have children themselves, but it would be really nice to be the spoiling aunt. That is something I've always wanted to do. So that makes it difficult. Um, And then one other time, also in 2001, I saw my sister at a family wedding, only a couple months after the funeral, actually. Um, so, it's just been really, really difficult every chance they get. They have sent witnesses to my door, trying to invite me to the memorial. Um, I remember one time when I was living with my ex-roommates, they came to the door. We looked out the window. I think we had had a party the night before and weren't really up for guests. And I looked out the window, and you can tell Jehovah's Witnesses. They're pretty easy to pinpoint, especially on like a Sunday morning. And my roommate went down at the time. Now my roommate up here where I live now was also my friend back home in my hometown when I was going through the process of leaving. And she doesn't really think too highly of my family. So she went down to answer the door. And I don't know who these people were, but apparently they were sent by, they live local to me, but somehow met my sister and brother-in-law somewhere. And I guess they asked them to make a little call to me, a little shepherding call, I guess. They were very nicely told not to come back unless they were asked to by me, not by anyone else, not by someone sending them to my house. So, yeah, it's just been a long road, and it's sad that it's affected people that it shouldn't affect. Now, last year, my cousin got married, and I had emailed him about a week before the wedding, and I didn't want to stress him out. He was going through enough. But I also needed to know if my sister was going to be there because I needed to mentally prepare if I was going to see her. It's been quite a few years. So, it was nice. He emailed me back, and he basically told me that, he loves God and he loves his family, but he loves his family more, and he really has no use for my sister anymore with the way she's treated me and all that. So, it felt good to know I have that support, and if it weren't for my grandmother and my aunt and my cousins, I would have no family. These are the people I spend Thanksgiving with and Christmas with, and I hope they know how much it means to me to have them in my life, because without them, I'd really have nobody, family-wise. So it means a lot to have their support. Um, Sorry for getting all emotional again. I'm going to wrap this up. Um, that's my story in a three-part nutshell. Sorry to go on and on. If you find it boring, don't watch. I'm doing these videos to help somebody out there. Help somebody who's going through it now, or help somebody to avoid going through it at all. People need to know that this religion tears families up, and it does so unapologetically. The hypocrisy, just it kills me. It honestly kills me. So if you find them boring, don't watch. These videos were meant to help the people that are searching for that help out there. I didn't have this as a resource when I was leaving, and I could have used it back then. I'm glad I have it now. Both the ability to make these videos and view others, because they've been a huge source of support to me. So I'm just doing this to kind of return the favor and pay it forward, and hopefully be a source of support to somebody else out there. So thanks for listening, and I'll make another video soon. Good night.